He had a gun pointed at my kid's face, and I was still in my old rocking chair with a cold cup of coffee in my hand. That is the moment my brain likes to replay. When the house is quiet, this sweaty man in a cheap blazer screaming at my son to get on his knees, or he would not walk away. My boy standing on our driveway with his hands half raised and his eyes locked on the black hole at the end of the barrel. I did not rush him or start yelling. I just took one long breath and thought, "You have got to be kidding me. After 18 years in the Army, this is where the danger shows up on a cul-de-sac in the suburbs," because my kid was fixing his car. My name is Mark Dalton, retired Army Ranger, and a couple years ago I bought a little house at the end of a cul-de-sac in a subdivision called Maple Ridge Estates, just outside Austin. The kind of place with matching mailboxes, a community pool, and a Facebook group that argues about Christmas lights. Exactly the level of boring I thought I wanted, after 18 years of not boring, you know what I mean. The HOA brochure talked about pride of ownership and community standards, and I figured they were just there to keep broken-down RVs off the lawn and stop people from painting their houses neon green. Nothing that would ever involve a firearm. My son, Evan, is 19, tall, built like a linebacker, but with the personality of a golden retriever, soft-spoken, and polite, the kind of kid who apologizes when you bump into him, and means it. That summer, he fell in love with a beat-up silver sedan he bought with his own money. Clear coat peeling engine, coughing, but to him, it was freedom. His first real piece of the world. Most afternoons, he would roll it up the driveway slide under it on a creeper. Tools spread beside him, and I would sit on the porch with a mug of bad coffee, listening to wrenches on concrete, and thinking this is the kind of noise I can live with now. My kid arguing with a rusty bolt, instead of me listening for explosions. Then the HOA showed up at our door. One morning there was pounding like someone had a warrant. I opened it and found Linda Hart, HOA President logo polo clipboard, tight smile that never touched her eyes. She did not say good morning. "Just Mr. Dalton, we need to talk about the situation in your driveway," and the way she said situation. You would think Evan had parked a tank out there. I glanced past her at the car. Hood open, little oil stain on the concrete. No music, no junk, and said, "You mean my son's car?" She ignored that and launched into the speech. Maple Ridge does not allow visible mechanical work. Oil stains are a violation. Junk vehicles. Hurt property values. All those phrases that really mean your kid's car. Offends me. She slapped me with a couple of fines, reminded me I had signed the covenants, and walked away like she had rescued the neighborhood. Over the next few weeks, the mailbox turned into a slow drip of envelopes, more fines for tools in the driveway, for leaving the hood up after 7. A letter in bold that said, "This is your final warning," like we were running a chop shop. And every time Evan saw one, he got a little quieter, asked if he should just stop working on the car. Said he did not want the neighbors to hate us. That hurt more than the dollar amounts watching a good kid start to feel like he was a problem in his own home. One night, I finally pulled out the binder of covenants, the thing everybody signs and nobody reads, and actually went through it. Buried between rules about mailbox height and approved shrubs was a line that said vehicle maintenance is allowed on private driveways between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. as long as the vehicle is registered and operable. We were square. It was not just my gut. It was right there in black and white. I planned to show that to the board and talk like adults. Instead, they sent a guy named Clint in a dark blue Crown Vic, calling himself the compliance officer. The first time he rolled up, he parked sideways across the mouth of my driveway, like he was setting up a roadblock, climbed out in a navy blazer that did not fit gray pants, cheap loafers, and a shiny little badge pinned crooked to his lapel, grabbed a clipboard and sunglasses he did not need, and marched up our driveway like he owned it. He kicked the tire of Evan's car and barked hay out from under there now, and my kid slid out, wiped his hands, and said, "Can I help you, sir?" The guy puffed his chest and said, "Name's Clint Rogers. I'm the compliance officer for Maple Ridge HOA enforcement. You are in violation of multiple codes, and you could tell he loved the word enforcement." I stayed in my chair and let him talk because I wanted to see how he treated my kid when he thought I was just part of the scenery. He rattled off his list junk vehicle. Oil stains, visual clutter, threatened daily fines tossed in towing for good measure, and Evan very calmly told him he had read the covenants and knew he could work on his car in the driveway during the day as long as it was registered and operable. You could see the vein in Clint's forehead jump at the idea of a 19-year-old quoting the same rules he hides behind. He stepped closer, got in my boy's space, and said, "You think you know the rules better than the guy they hired to enforce them?" "That's cute," then slapped a notice on the hood and said, "Move this heap into a garage by the end of the week, or I start making your life real uncomfortable." That was my line. From the porch, I finally spoke. "Clint, you're on my property. If you have paperwork, you can leave it in the mailbox like everybody else and go." He flicked his eyes at me, took in the t-shirt. The gray hair smirked. "You'll be hearing from us," and drove off like he had done something important. The next letter from the HOA was all teeth talking about continued non-compliance, daily penalties, suspension of pool privileges, and that magic word, lien, like a little knife aimed at our roof, and sitting at the kitchen table reading it. I felt this low-boxed in anger. I had not really met, even getting shot at the anger of being pushed around on paper by people who have never had to bleed for anything. Yeah, that happened. Evan tried to shrug it off, but I could see it eating at him. See that look people get when they start wondering if they are worth the trouble. The morning everything boiled over. Started out ordinary hot, and still cicadas buzzing. Evan had the sedan up on a jack, installing a part he had saved for Rusty snoring under my chair seat with another mug of lukewarm coffee. Then I heard that Crown Vic, again engine louder, coming in faster, and my dog snapped awake and gave this low growl toward the street. The car rolled past two houses cut hard and stopped nose first across my driveway, blocking it completely. Before the engine even shut off, Clint was out, blazer swinging, jaw clenched, and the way his jacket sagged on one side made my stomach drop, even before my brain named it. He stomped up the driveway and, without a word, kicked the jack so hard the car rocked. "Snapped. I told you this car was done. You ignored me." Now I'm taking it. Evan slid out from under the car grease on his arms, but he stood his ground and said, "You can't take my car. You don't have that authority." Hearing that from him was half pride, half pure fear. Clint stepped in so close their noses almost touched and hissed, "Kid, when I say a vehicle is a problem, it's a problem. You people move in here and think you can turn this place into a low-rent shop. Not on my watch." And that little "you people" with a glance at me told me exactly what he thought of us. I pushed myself out of the chair and said, "Clint, back away from my son." Instead of backing off, he decided to prove a point. He stepped fully onto my driveway, swept his blazer aside, and put his hand on the grip of a handgun in a nylon holster, then pointed it straight at Evan's chest and yelled, "Both of you on your knees right now, or this goes bad." The whole cul-de-sac went dead quiet. Evan did the bravest dumb thing I have ever seen. He took a small step sideways, so he was directly between that gun and me. Hands higher, voice shaking as he said, "You don't have to do this, man. We can talk to the board, just put the gun away." Clint jabbed the barrel closer to his face and screamed, "Shut up. You are going to show me some respect." His finger already inside the trigger guard. In that stretched-out heartbeat, I knew if I rushed him with the gun steady on my kid, one flinch could take Evan away from me, so I reached for the one tool I trusted. I locked eyes with my boy and said one word, "Down." Not loud, just sharp, and his body obeyed on instinct. He dropped flat to the concrete arms over his head, turning from a standing target into something Clint's panicked brain did not know how to track. The muzzle dipped for a fraction of a second. That was my window. I stepped in with my hands raised like I was surrendering and said, "Easy, Clint. You got the gun. You're in charge." Just listen for a second, closing the distance in slow, harmless steps until I was close enough to smell his sweat. Then I added, "You ever actually fired that thing? Because the way you're holding it, that slide is going to cut your hand open." His eyes dropped for just long enough to check his grip. I exploded forward, slammed the side of the gun with my left hand, and drove the barrel away toward the bushes. His finger clenched. The shot went off like a firecracker. A hedge behind him exploded in leaves, and I was already on his wrist, twisting with everything the Army ever taught me. Something in his forearm gave with a crack. He screamed, the gun popped free, and I shoved him face first onto my driveway, dropped my knee into the small of his back, and told him, "Do not move." While he howled that I had broken his arm, I popped the magazine, racked the slide, until the last round bounced onto the concrete. Set the empty pistol where I could see it, and he could not, and told Evan to grab my phone and the big zip ties from the garage. I called 911, told them, "Shots fired, suspect, disarmed and restrained. Send police and EMS." By the time I hung up, neighbors were spilling out of their houses with phones up, because of course they were. Clint heard them and switched into victim mode, yelling, "Help, this psycho attacked me. I'm HOA security. I was just doing my job." He broke my arm. I did not bother arguing. I just nodded toward the little dome camera above the garage, red light blinking, and said loud enough for the closest folks to hear that thing has been recording since he pulled up from the second. He blocked my driveway to the moment he fired that shot. He can save his story for the judge, and you could feel the mood shift when people looked up and saw the camera. Patrol cars rolled in fast lights bouncing off perfect siding officers, jumped out with guns drawn, shouting for me to show my hands. And that was its own special kind of tense, because I had survived the idiot with the badge. Now I had to make sure the real cops did not mistake me for him. I raised my hands. Slow, fingers spread, and shouted back, "I'm the homeowner. The weapon is on the ground. Slide, locked back. I'm not armed. My son has video." The sergeant in front of me listened, checked what I said, lowered his rifle a notch, and had another officer kick the empty gun farther away and put real cuffs on Clint. He kept whining about how he was just protecting the neighborhood until that same sergeant watched the video on Evan's phone, saw the Crown Vic block the driveway, heard the threats, watched Clint draw, and fire, and his whole face went flat in that way that means, yeah, this is going in the report. If this had just been a guy with a temper and a gun, the story might have stopped there. But the twist came when they searched his car and pulled a duffel bag off the front seat. Inside were neat stacks of folders, each with a photo of a teenager from our streets clipped to it, names and notes about when they walked home and when their parents were usually gone. One of those photos was Evan carrying groceries up our front walk, taken 3 days earlier, with the words "often alone" scribbled underneath. I have been shot at, blown up, and dropped out of planes. But that is the moment my hands really started to shake. Clint went to jail that day, and 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom while our security footage played on a big screen, 12 strangers watching him shove a gun in my kid's face over a car and watching me knock it away. It did not take them long to say guilty. Guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. Guilty of impersonating an officer. Guilty of menacing. And the judge gave him more than a decade to think about why he ever believed a badge and a gun made him king of a cul-de-sac. The HOA tried to act shocked, called him a rogue, said they had no idea. But emails have long memories. When the neighbors saw messages Linda had sent him, things like, "Do whatever you need to keep that driveway under control. We can't let people like that drag us down." The next board meeting turned into a line of homeowners talking about their own fines and threats. When someone called for a vote to remove her, hands went up so fast she did not finish her speech about standards. From the outside, Maple Ridge looks normal again. Stain cleaned, dent fixed. Evan's car running better than it deserves to me. Back on the porch with Rusty and a mug. But there is a layer under all that now. This understanding that the line between safe and dangerous is thinner than a lot of people want to admit, especially in neighborhoods that look picture perfect. One night in the garage, Evan asked if I had been scared when the gun was on him, and I told him, yeah, absolutely scared of losing him, and scared of losing control, and becoming the kind of man who solves everything with maximum force. Told him real strength is not how fast you can break somebody. It is how much damage you know you could do, and choosing on purpose to hold back until you really have no choice. So I am throwing this out to you now, wherever you are listening. If you were in my shoes, do you think I handled it right? Did I go too far? Not far enough. At what point does an HOA or any little slice of authority stop protecting a community and start bullying it? And have you ever had a boss, a board, a neighbor hide behind rules to push you around? Let me know in the comments. Argue with me if you feel like it. Tell your own story about power getting out of hand. Because there are a lot of quiet driveways and quiet dads out there living their own version of Maple Ridge, and sometimes just saying it out loud is how you start taking a little of that power back.